All right. What I did, I wanted to increase a little contrast in the ground area here, so I took a colored pencil, my watercolor pencil, and I went ahead and laid in a little texture. I'm going to soften it up with the brush. So I'm just going to kind of wind things down here. I'm also going to use one of the wax pastels. So I'm first going to start by softening some of that work that I did with the, remember, when I say pencil, I'm talking about the watercolor pencil, not Prismacolor, not regular colored pencil, but it's the water-soluble watercolor pencil. So I've loaded a brush with some water. I'm just going to tap it in here. It's going to soften the graininess a little so it doesn't look so much like a colored pencil texture, and it'll also enhance the color and make it glow a little. Okay. Increase a little of the texture on the ground. I even ran some through some of the shadow here. And of course I've got my brush loaded with a little of it so I can push it around in other areas. Okay. All right. And while we're on the subject of things changing, in the previous video I told you about how things change once they get filled in. Remember, I had an empty spot here. I need to make sure there's some green in there. So I'm going to go ahead and load up with some green. Okay. Now, just to show you how the wax crayon can come in handy, I'm going to dip a little of it in some yellow. And I'm going to work it right in here. And then I'm going to blend all of that together so that my watercolor changed and it's not so blue-green anymore, so phthalo. So now I've changed it up with just a little bit of that added, rather than dipping for some yellow. Is just use some of the pencil for that, or the crayon, excuse me. Brush some more of that in here. I think I'd like to increase some of the greenness here and some texture. Set up like another little ridge of tall grass right here. Also notice that the shadow kind of extends all the way out here, so I'm going to rub a little of that darker green into this area so that shadow fades out some more. And then of course this one I also realize covers the ground. There we go. All right, so to give it a more natural appearance, and it even kind of comes all the way out in there. Okay. Now in the shadow in the tree, again I'm going to make a little use of the crayon. This time I'm going to use the black crayon, dip it in a little water, and I'm going to intensify some of the shadows in here. And again, I'm going to use kind of a gestural approach. I'm just going to tap this, squiggle it around so that my marks with it start to have a little variation. See, and it's melting right into the watercolor. Again, I can also rub some of this in and then come back and soften it with a brush. That's another approach I can take with it. You know, using this is also a nice way of adding some of the stronger, smaller, dark textures of leaves instead of using a brush. you might find that this works better for you. And you can see the technique I'm using. I'm just kind of scribbling it, twisting it, and pushing it while I'm using it so it doesn't give you such a definite kind of mark, something that's too heavy-handed, but varied and more natural, comparable to how you might handle a paintbrush with a little finesse. See that? Breaking up and making a little more texture. Now, I would always advise you, if you're going to use this, as I'm using it now, just dry right on the paper, is to come back with a damp brush and just tap over the tree with some water so that it makes it more likely for this to stick and adhere to your paper. Otherwise, it may always just be a surface presence that could be scratched off. See that? Now I've got a lot more texture in there. That's a little easier to do rather than using a brush. Just kind of let the graininess imply the darker texture in the leaves. I'm going to come into this shape and do the same thing. Okay, I'm even going to come back and use it to darken the tree trunks, providing a little stronger contrast now. Of course, this crayon, you know, one thing, I can't go back in the sky again. So this is it. I've got to leave it alone, because if I do, it's going to loosen that, and then I'm going to have a little black in my sky, which is going to really turn it into a different kind of sky. All right, here we go. There seems to be a little bit more clutter in here, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Okay, there you go. All right. You know, I could also use a little of this in here as well if I wanted to set up another ridge or some more texture. Okay. Again, I'm going to use this down in here to kind of set up, like, not so much a border, but to strengthen the edge between the ground cover, or green, and the dirt area. I'm just going to use this in here as well. Now, I would say I'm not 100% finished with this, but I do want to once again show you what it's like in a cleaner situation. Let me hit this with the dryer real quick. Time for the big reveal. Nothing's going to be drastically different other than the presentation will be set off with a much cleaner appearance. I was just trying to recount the first couple of videos. I think amounted to about a half hour on this one. And maybe today's work is about another half hour, 45 minutes. So you can see that, you know, talking about watercolor being quick, well, certainly if you have a blow dryer, it helps. But, you know, the idea, well, 2 paintings in a week, I think it becomes certainly possible without too much panic, because looking at the scale of the paper, you know, it makes much more sense to use the full sheet of paper rather than trying to cut it down and have everything be much smaller. But again, it looks much better when you have a nice clean taped border instead of just having the painting go all the way to the edge. All right, so work on this. Remember, if you have some in progress stages, email them to me. If you have some questions about what some of the problems you think they are, how can you alleviate them, and not wait till the day before the critique. Okay? All right. See you soon. Monday again, we'll do our Zoom critique at 1 o'clock. So try to make sure you can email those to me. I'm also going to do a quick, I'll send you a couple of pictures, stills, because I think if you look at how I'm going to use my phone to photograph this, I think it might help, because some of you are still, having your image, your watercolor look so small in the photograph, and unless they're cropped and edited, which takes a little longer, and I only have about an hour to put this all together for the Zoom critique, to make sure you'll have a little bit more time. I don't want to take them the day before, because it gives you some time even on Monday morning to do some final touches. But I'm going to send you some stills just to give you some pointers on how you can photograph and not have so much ground or wall space that makes your picture look really small. Okay? All right, thanks.